Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Art of Leading, Captivating Leadership Narratives. I'm excited to introduce you to Sarthak Brahma. Sarthak is the CEO and managing partner at HEX Advisory Group. Hello, Sarthak. How are you today?
Good. It's a Friday, so nothing to crib about. And plus, thank you for having me, Margaret.
And so glad you're here, especially I know you're going to be off traveling for the next few weeks. So we got lucky getting you in this little window here.
Yep, yep. No, likewise. I mean, I'm glad we could squeeze this in, even though it was a little last minute and took some scheduling challenges from what I hear. But I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, same with me. So, but I'd love to start the discussion for if you could share an overview of HEX Advisory Group. What is it that you guys do, and who is your target client?
Sure. So, HEX Advisory Group is basically an efficiency advisory firm. In fact, the word hex comes from the hexagon, which is God's thumbprint for efficiency. It's the most resilient shape, the most efficient shape, and we see it all around us, right? It's God's thumbprint. So that's why HEX. And so what we do is essentially help corporations, large aviation companies, travel, transportation. Right now, the world's largest airline, the one of the oldest hospitality groups, mining company in Australia, wherever it be, look for efficiencies in their people, process, technology, vendor sprawl, vendor contracts, pricing, commercials, and basically look for efficiencies. And now, front and center of that is any of these efficiencies, there is no appetite for it to happen at a very steady pace. The idea is, are there disruptive ways to get to the finish line? And if there is, therefore, it's not just about the quantum of efficiency, it's also about the quickness of efficiency. And that is where now two things happen. One is, what kind of a process does a firm apply? And am I incented to drive a client to the finish zone quick? Many a times I can speak from experience, and so can you. When you're
Mhm.
part of a large organization, a large consulting firm, you are conflicted to run a client to a finish zone quick because there are mouths to feed. There's the whole P&L and a profit sharing aspect. Well, at this point in time in my journey, I don't have that. So I'm incented. The intent for me is to create more brand equity. I rely on peer advocacy. So if I can help one CIO, one CTO, one CFO at a time, and by the way, those are the clients we serve, then the word spreads and the peer advocacy spreads, and that's how we grow. So very quickly put, that's what we are. We run efficiency mandates for the CFO, CIO, CTOs, in certain cases even CEOs of mid-sized corporations, and we run it quick. And we don't run the typical long-term hoops. And we also try to look for technology disruptors to make it happen quick, because as we know, with the advent of agentic AI, with the advent of service delivery automation, so all of these become pivots for us, or wedges for us to drive those conversations, even with the likes of an Accenture or an IBM or the Tatas or whoever are the vendors bringing those solutions to bear. Our job is to represent the client, work a roadmap, and then take it to a quick execution with whichever the partner of choice. Final thing, as part of these efficiency mandates, we also are helping these organizations which are constrained from a location standpoint to start thinking of setting their own center, things that they can call themselves, which you may have picked up now. There's a lot of buzz around global capability centers, GCCs, which are nothing but your own people sitting 10,000, 13,000 miles away. You can call their own, but now you are doing it at a much more efficient and cost basis, arbitrage basis, and all of that can work to your advantage. So we are also setting up a lot of those GCCs around the globe. So that is us in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, thank you. There's so many things that are interesting in that. First of all, I love the definition or how you talk of it, hex. So the hexagon, I think that's really interesting, and that speed execution is a real differentiator.
Yeah.
We both talked about our time at Ernst and Young, which is a
Yes.
wonderful organization, but speed is important. But I love that that is like a core tenet or core value of what you guys do, and that you want to help your clients be successful as quickly as possible. So, it's probably underlying of what other firms do, but that you have it front and center, I think is really unique and
Absolutely.
important.
And we have been in this field, you've been in this field. There is always a quicker, faster, better way of doing things. And if that becomes the motto with which you run, you will find a way. and
Yeah.
you will be able to empathize with what the client wants, because the appetite for transformation is no longer, hey, show me the benefit in 3 quarters. People want it in this quarter if possible, or
Right.
get some yield this quarter, something next quarter. So the idea is, how quickly can we make that happen for clients? And
Well, and technology, as you said, AI and everything is changing so quickly that if you take your time, it's already going to change. I mean, it's going to change anyway, but how do you get it going and everything like that? So,
absolutely,
yeah,
yes.
very interesting. So, changing topics a little bit, I'd love to hear for you to share a little bit about your own leadership journey and how you got to where you are today.
So, as far as I'm concerned, Margaret, I would be the first to admit that leadership for me was a choice, right? It wasn't something which was a part of a grand design. Had you asked me 3 years or 4 years back whether this was something I was working all the way through, and the last 25 years of career was all geared towards making this happen, I'll be very candid in saying no. One thing led to another, and things happen. And not only that, as a leader, I also believe now that the things which used to weigh me down, the people who used to weigh me down, everything that stood in the way paved a way for me to be here today. Because in those frustrations and in those, situations with those people, I learned what not to be and what not to do when, if ever, destiny or life offered me the chance to do something on my own, which it has. So everything adds up. Everything is good in the grand scheme of things. Now, with that, the way it happened was that my journey basically, I mean, we discussed the EY years, but after that, I joined a firm called the Everest Group. Uh, Recession hit right after that, so we were pretty much all waiting for uh, some kind of an email to come in, which you half expect. And during that, offices were shutting down elsewhere. So during that time, a couple of requirements came in, and it came from the buy side, a large pharma company in Europe, as well as it came from a couple of service providers, right? Accenture, Cognizance of the world. And the mandate was very simple. Again, it's a recession time. How do we recalibrate the spend that we have in our technology footprint for our technology services footprint? So service providers wanted to become, completely recalibrate their pricing and price to win and how they could appeal to the new norm. And obviously, the clients in the middle of a recession wanted to lighten their books. So that is when I took it upon myself. I was anyways on beach or bench, depending on which firm one has served. So yeah, so the first semblance of a database, and that also wasn't easy because a lot of times, as you know, the data resides in people's laptops or in SharePoint, some folders you don't have access to. So a bunch of emailing to just pool that data, multiple requests to make it, and then create the semblance of a first database. Having created that, then we delivered on those gigs, and it did well. On the back of that, we were getting these point solutions, and it added up. So as a one guy shop sitting in Gurgaon in India, we secured almost close to half or shy of $500,000 of billables, which told me that there is a market for point solutions and expedited solutions, right? As opposed to the long drawn thing. So that became the journey, and the reason for me to then pitch this as an idea to build a practice around it, which did phenomenally well. And I ran it for 10 and a half years, left Everest Group, moved on to another firm, which was all a coterie of CIO, CTOs called W Group. I had a great run there because this was a bunch of senior people. And so I realized I have mascots all around me. And so, but they are doing strategy. So can we, go ahead and do the execution? So based on that, I ran the execution cycle, created an execution practice, and that did pretty well. Then we moved to a French firm who acquired us. So I continued to head the practice there. As a part of that, went back and acquired a part of, as part of the French firm, we acquired my former practice from the Everest Group. So that became a part of ours. Now, finally, when my earnout and my days were coming to this thing, the choice was, do I continue to do what I'm doing here, or do I go out and join another firm? And that's when, with a little help or cajoling or over a couple of drinks right on the balcony on the patio right behind me, the idea came from my former CEO, and he said, you probably just should buy your stuff out because you have done this 3 or 4 times. You know how to do it. If you leave anyways, it's going to die on the vine. So just make an offer and buy it out. And that is what led to this entire journey of paying for it, buying out my practice, the entire India operations, and setting up HEX Advisory group as an independent consulting firm.
I
And
love that.
so yeah, so that's how the journey unfolded.
Yeah, well, and congratulations. It's also interesting. It's such a small world. I mean, it sounds like, you went to another firm and then you bought your old one. I mean, it's just,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
those lifelong relationships are
Yep.
really key, especially if you're staying within the industry.
Absolutely. So, and that's the other thing,
Yeah,
right? Fundamentally, I do see people who have the gumption and the will to try completely change the trajectory, an orbital shift, which is great, right? Kudos to them because there is a certain amount of risk and undertaking or an idea. Because in that case, you're relying on an idea whose time has come, or so you believe. But in my case, I just decided to set up something which I know how to do it. And within that trade, and there's a big lineage of doing things. And then if you know that this craft can be honed and done better, then I'm just the guy who's relying on that experience build up and just doing it better, quicker, faster, like I told you. But this is not an orbital shift. It's probably an orbital shift in the way we deliver the goods, but it's not an orbital shift
yeah,
or a net new idea. So that's, yeah.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's so interesting. I coach a lot of senior executives, and we talk about how do you be more intentional about your career, your personal life, all of that. I would say I wasn't. I wish I had a decade game and really thought about it. Now, I lucked out. I had good mentors and sponsors and did very well. But I do think if you can be a little intentional, that's a good thing. And it may be intentional on experiences. It may not be intentional, like I know what I want to do when I grow up, but it's how do you continue to expand those experiences, which you did without maybe intentionally thinking about it. It's just natural of what you did. So
And
that's
another
great.
thing, Margaret, was that I was always entrepreneurial. As I told you, I've set up practices elsewhere, but this change from being entrepreneurial to an entrepreneur, it's also not an easy one because when you're an entrepreneurial guy or gal doing stuff, but you have the safety net of a bigger organization or a paycheck
Yeah,
is coming, great, right? I mean, the upside is great, downside is kind of hedged. But when you change all that and completely leave that safety net, oh, then yeah, then and not only that, besides other things, it's a test of character, it's a test of will, it's a test of intent, but at the same time, it is also a test of, it has made me a little bit a more of a believer in putting good out because there's an element of superstition. You don't want anybody's ill will, ill intent to come on you. So I like to run a very clean shop, and which also helps me. You had asked me about a question on the leadership. I think leadership, the first and foremost thing, whether a leader is facing outwards and talking to the clients or the market, or looking inwards and talking to your own resources, your own people. I think the core thing, and this is my belief, is that one needs to be real. Are you authentic?
mm-hmm.
If a leader is authentic and not putting up a facade or just saying the things that they need to say or do because they need to, then that creates a very, very big amount of there's a huge amount of currency on that being that authenticity, and people can see it. So they also know
Yeah,
that there are times that the same leader could be reprimanding of my team on things that doesn't need to happen, but they know that it comes from a place of authenticity.
right.
Because I would probably be the same guy to shower accolades at them should things go the right way, right? So being authentic is clear, and clients love it. I think they can see
Yeah,
through it. We are in a people's industry. I think everybody is intelligent in that form. So just be authentic.
yeah.
That's a core. Yeah.
I love that. I always say, for me, one of my core values is do the right thing.
Yeah.
And, execution sometimes falls apart, but at
Yeah.
least your intentions are
Right.
good. And it's the
Correct.
same thing you're talking about. So I
Okay.
love that. Well, thank you for sharing that. So if you were to go back in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
Great question. I would say, I think if I go back, and I have like anecdotes I can relate to, right? I mean, just the thing, first of all, the realization that I used to always believe that I had the right answers, right? Or what I'm thinking is the right way to probably do it. Now, there could be some merit to that, but it's also about how you put that thing out. Are you talking to the audience, or are you just talking because you believe? So it cannot be a one-sided thing. How do you socialize a certain thing that you have in your mind. So I think there were a lot of rough edges in me back then. And I think, call it age or just call it this journey, I think
Mhm.
begin to appreciate that you can't change people. And maybe some of them you can turn the screws a bit, but you can't fundamentally change the fabric. But that doesn't mean that those people are, again, ill-intentioned, or all of them are, or they are not amenable to hearing. So it's also about how do you choose to put things out so that you can connect to them. Everybody is can be connected to in some form or format. The idea is to find that common denominator. I think I was too impatient back then to be able to rationalize or find that common denominator. It was a one-way broadcast. I think I've begun to appreciate the art of listening, a counterpoint, and then trying to calibrate or recalibrate how I need to put out something, or whether I need to rethink what I was about to say, and maybe they
Yeah.
challenged me or not the other way around. So I think that's what age and time teaches you.
Yeah. I love that. It's very thoughtful. And I do think, as you're talking about, it's like, oh, I can relate to that in my 20s, how I approach things very differently than I
Yeah,
did in my 50s.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, well, thank you for that. And what were some of the challenges that you faced early in your leadership roles, and how did you overcome them?
So I think the biggest risk when I started HEX Advisory Group was to not know whether anybody will come. And honestly, looking back, it's interesting because the places I expected help to come from, it didn't.
Mm,
Um, but the places I never expected, which was not even a blip on the radar, people showed up and they stood by, and a lot of them were complete strangers to me. Some of these CIOs of some of the largest corporations, CTOs, they took a chance on a completely unheard of person or an entity. Now, in this industry of IT and BPO outsourcing, I think people do know Sarthak Brahma. So that helped some, but nobody knew HEX Advisory. And many a times, people feel safer if there is a large MBB or a big four attesting to a report or to a plan. And so it truly takes a little spine on, or a risk appetite on part of these complete unknowns to trust an unknown. And so more kudos to them for having lent towards me and reached out to me and trusted me for being a part of their journey. So I think that to me was the biggest thing. And honestly, it doesn't go away, because even
yeah.
today, if you ask me, pipeline for a new boutique consulting firm who's running on a thought on this entire philosophy of doing things very efficiently, it's also sometimes constrained by how many conversations I can have, because I don't have the event board, or to do like keep signing checks to do those many events and put my word out or do marketing at that. So it's very conversation driven. But the good thing is, because it's conversation driven, wherever we are afforded a conversation, we have won against the likes of the firms who are like up there. And so I'm a big believer now that I'm totally up for a rebound love, because a lot of people or a lot of senior leadership have burned their hands with some of the larger firms to realize that, hey, we want an alternate way of thinking. And those are the ones who are sticky and have shown trust, and we have reciprocated, and we have been able to help them back. So, but that continues to be a journey. So that remains an issue, and or whatever, an opportunity, and how,
Yeah.
how to increase that conversation fun. So yes.
But it goes back to that authenticity. People buy from people they like and trust at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you've done it. It's not like you haven't proved that you've done it. So
Yeah.
it wasn't, I would say, such a huge risk, because here's someone who's authentic,
Yeah.
who has done it before. And okay, they're in a little different role, but they felt like they could trust you and they like you. So, well,
Yeah.
hats off to you on that. So,
Yeah. And I think the other thing also is, see, I'm a big believer in bootstrapping, self-funding, right? We are cash flow positive. I put our own money. Not only that, like I said, some folks who I was not expecting to, they stood by us, but the ones who didn't. But the good thing was that we never needed to go out. Engagements paid for themselves. We are doubling down on growth. We are growing exponentially, obviously on a low base. So the numbers, yeah, there's a mathematical base effect. But But I think the good thing is that we are bootstrapped entirely. And so now when I'm taking that same philosophy and applying it and making it relatable to a CFO who is not willing to sign a net new check and give it to IT and technology in today's times, I tell them that my philosophy is to find money in the inefficiencies in your ecosystem and self-fund the transformation that you need. So I'll find the money in your existing contracts, your existing bloat, and part of it will go into your coffer and part will get done. In doing that itself, it's a breath of fresh air for them because they know that this is my philosophy, this is how I started my firm, and this is how I'm going to help them. So yeah.
Well, it's low risk for them because you
It's a
have
low
skin in
risk
the
for
game.
them. Yeah.
Absolutely. I
And
love
also in
that.
my
I mean,
contracting, I
yeah,
tell them very
yeah,
frankly, if you don't, if because you're taking a risk on me, I understand who is Sarthak, who's HEX. So let me do one better because I know I can deliver the goods. If let me also, if you are willing for it, pay me when I hit those milestones. And once I draft a milestone, that is no longer a professional mandate for me. It's as much a personal mandate for me to make you successful, whether you are a CFO or CIO. It is my personal intent, not just a professional intent, to make that happen. So yeah.
well, and from a business development perspective, it's a easy way to get someone to try you because it's really low risk, right? Success equals success for both of you.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, so brilliant. So you talked a little bit about before that this being an authentic leader, and my next question really is about how do you build trust and rapport with your team? I think that authenticity is one way. Are there other things that come to mind that in addition to being authentic?
So if you were having this conversation with my team, they would tell you that my dad was in the Indian Air Force. Let me take a step back, right? So one of the things which he told me back then was that, how do you explain that, and somebody out there in the line is willing to put their life at risk on the command of their officer, commanding officer? And there is no greater tenet in the entire human chessboard of leadership, blindly going to war and putting your life, the ultimate sacrifice, on the command of somebody you rely on. And so if that's the case, then you need to understand what drives that. Yes, there is a certain amount of fervor that the being, doing this for the country and all that some have, it drives it. But partly beyond that, you are relying on the command, on the trust of one person who's giving you that order. And that comes from the fact that in the worst of times, that person will be standing next to me. And that happens in the army. And so what does that mean? It means that if my leadership is predicated on the same tenet, that means and at the same time, the commanding officers are also the ones who will, make sure that the people button up, right? And so no, the ground is uncovered when you have to make sure that corrective action is taken. So no loosey-goosey thing. So the same thing is, I like to become a wall. Nobody can talk ill about my team. They have to go through me. God forbid, like you had mentioned, execution can go wrong. But if it goes wrong, I am accountable, not my team.
Yeah.
Right? So I need to be a wall when it comes to that. And my team knows I'm a wall. Not only that, just recently, being the firm we are, we pulled a plug on a $500,000 billing. Why? Because it was not worth the pressure that client, and not all clients are the same, that it happens once in a while. But this time it happened last year, and that was not the client and not the kind of people you want to serve. The beauty of another thing is that being an entrepreneur at this age and stage in life, I can choose to work with the kind of people, do the kind of work, and do it for the reasons that I want to do. And a part of it is that if things are not ideologically aligned, then I can choose not to. And so in that particular instance, it was not worth to put my team in that line of sight of a client who was being very, very subvertive, and all of those reasons I'll not get into. But I choose to unplug because it was not worth my team and they were getting flustered. So be a wall. But when the time comes and they have done good, be the bridge. Let the accolades flow to them, stand on the sidelines, don't hog it, and let them get it. So that is a big thing. The wall and the bridge thing is, to me, a big part of my leadership style. And the other thing I think is just I think you earn a lot of trust by the team knowing that when push comes to shove or whenever I do not shy away from getting my own hands dirty and getting into the trenches. and picking up that gun, because they know I get into the spreadsheets if I need to. They can reach out to me for certain support, or when they are. So I do not shy away from working spreadsheets or PowerPoints or picking up something and drafting things. I think that autonomy of work or being that, completely hands-on, I think it drives a certain amount of respect from them, that I'm not just the guy sitting on my high horse and giving commands. No,
Yeah.
I can get it done. So I think that being autonomous and granting autonomy to each of them to try the same thing out, go try out. You will fail, but guess what? What's the beauty of being in an entrepreneurial startup if you are scared of failure? I think that thing to me is great. And I think as organizations grow, leadership style becomes more bureaucratic, and that little hands-on and being in the trenches and the team looking up to you, to be there when things go wrong. I think that is a big part of leadership that goes astray. And I hope to maintain that, because that's a core belief system I grew up with, and I'm hoping to live it each single day.
Yeah. So first of all, there's so many great nuggets of information there, and your dad must be proud that he set such a great example that you continue to take with you, and in your own journey. It's so interesting. I remember I had the opportunity to work with a wonderful senior executive during my time at Ernst & Young, and what was great about him is, I knew if I needed him, I was doing a lot of heavy lifting and really pushing the envelope on stuff. And he let us do our thing, but I knew if I needed him, he would come in and I could use him. And I don't even know if I ever did, but knowing I could made a huge difference in terms of feeling confident and really breaking some glass and moving things forward. So I think that's a really important for teams to feel like they've got your back. I love the analogy of the wall and the bridge. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure you're a wonderful person to be working for. So I love that. So changing topics a little bit, it's always interesting to hear how leaders stay sharp. You travel a lot. So, or what are you reading, or what are you listening to right now that has made a difference in your life?
So I'll be very honest. My reading outside of work stuff has drastically reduced. I know there are a lot of leaders out there and who like to put out the names of the books they read in a year at the close of the year and all that, and what they're planning to. I honestly envy them. I wish I could be people like them who could straddle book reading along with their busy lives and all that. I'm unfortunately not one of them. So what do I do with my free time? For instance, the thing that keeps me awake at night is there are too many things buzzing in my head, right? And there are times when many times in a week, even on an average, probably 2 nights or nights wherein I can't sleep because there's too much happening. So the one good practice I've started over the last few months, maybe over a year now, is to jot it down, all those things to jot down. And then if those are things which are just creative noise, then get that creative noise out in the form of doodles or a POV or a blog or whatever, and just put it out. If these are things that are buzzing, but these are things which need action, then create an action plan, which I can then delegate to someone and say, these are the 3 steps that need to happen. So whenever I'm traveling and when I have downtime, I'm actually putting a lot of this buzz out and documenting it, and then creating that and pushing it out so that things are happening, right? And this can range from anything. Like I said, could be creative doodling, which I sometimes do. You might have seen some on LinkedIn, or it could be, like I said, a marketing plan, or it could be a sales, or it could be somebody we need to reach out to. All of that goes up there, right? So that's one thing. Second thing is I've actually started listening to these, what do you call, the audiobooks to be best. So I put it on just before I sleep from an audiobook standpoint, one of the recent ones, which really was, amusing, was Prisoners of Geography. And Prisoners of Geography was very interesting. And actually it has certain similarities with Guns, Germs and Steel. And very fundamentally, it again explains why did certain continents or certain races become more advanced than some of the others, When fact of the and the chess pieces kept changing. The earliest civilizations, the most advanced were on the east. Then it started changing towards the west. And then how do certain nations do better than the others? And then within that, how do certain people do better than the others? And it all fundamentally comes down to the need to put yourself out there. When your back is against the wall, if everything is comfy and the regions which have very fertile soil and rivers flowing and everything, crops grow throughout the air, it's a temperate tropic climate, they have no reason to go out there or wage wars or be more aggressive or whatever, pick up guns, not required. And but that drive also pushes you to evolve faster, because now you're experimenting with ammo, with ways to create boats and go to places unheard. But so there is a certain benefit to being comfy or in a zone, because then you are more glued to where things are, but there is a certain benefit. And so these kind of things, which give me a very practical way to gauge why we are the way we are on a day-to-day basis, and how would my client be thinking about it? Am I truly thinking about just myself or from the other person's perspective? All those things we talked about just now, Margaret. I think these kind of books are very interesting for me, as opposed to just focusing on the books like on AI and all, because like I said, that anyways consumes my time. So I need some kind of a let out. So for me, the let out is when I listen to audiobooks which have nothing to do with my work, and just gives me an interesting dimension to run on. Because at the end of the day, I believe that business is not done between two logos. If it is happening between two logos, then it is happening for some very tactical or a selfish or a myopic view. If it's happening purely, like we discussed, purely based on trust and an intent, then businesses happen between people. Can you look each other in the eye and trust each other to do something good together? And part of that is understanding where it all comes from. So that's a bit about me and what I like to do with my downtime and the kind of things
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Well, you've got to also step away. And I think getting the noise out, you mentioned before, which really resonates, being entrepreneurial and being an entrepreneur is different in the sense that being entrepreneurial is new ideas, breaking the glass, moving forward. When you're an entrepreneur, you need to decide, what are you really going to prioritize and focus on and implement and make happen. And maybe some things get parking lot until you get that stuff done. So it's a little different mindset. And you do have to get that noise out and put it somewhere, either put it into practice or put it in a parking lot that, hey, it's not a priority now, but I'm going to make it one next, or whatever that may be.
And another thing which you just said, see, the other thing is there is already a lot being said about a lot of things, right? And a lot of good things. And so the idea is there a way for, if 20 people have said something about a topic, then am I being able to assimilate most of it and make it a part of my know-how? And the other thing is, but within that, there could be 5 you don't believe or don't contend. But that is good, because now it forces you to come up with a counterpoint on why you don't believe. Both are equally important, right? Learning from the good, learning from the things you don't agree with. But that assimilation and creating that original POV and your own, therefore your mindset, which is an amalgamation of both, that is the connecting of the dots that needs to happen. So I think that process of me taking out time to dedicatedly put those things out, I think that is helping me tremendously in how I'm running.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. So in closing, what would you say, and we probably touched on this, but what would you say the critical success factors or the secret sauce is to being an effective leader today from your perspective?
I think, like I said, I think be authentic, allow people to be authentic with you in your leadership style. People should not believe that the only way to get by you or get with you is for them to be shallow or sycophantic or whatever, right? So give them a chance to be authentic and treasure that. And like I said, be autonomous. Do not wait for your team to be the ones doing something by you. I do not shy away from just picking up and getting things done if I believe, and that sets the tone many a times that, hey, Sarthak is doing it. So whether it's out of embarrassment or guilt or whatever, we should be doing it. And the same thing is also true when I'm sometimes working with clients. I tell clients that I pride myself being faster than my client, because what else are you paying me for? Many people will drag their feet because that means more billable. But you signed up on HEX so that I can be fast. So part of my job is to push you to be faster. So, and if it means that I need to do some of your work, throw it at me, throw it at my firm. So that is that, that thing about just taking on charge, being autonomous and granting autonomy. I think that's the second key thing. And the third thing I said, like I said, the wall and the bridge, fundamentally just, protect them when required, but at the same time, protect them from the external brickbats. Doesn't mean that they should not get brickbats from you, because again, that's another thing. I do not believe that sugarcoating when it's not warranted is a wrong way of leadership. Many a times, that also does not help. But at the same time, being very rough with people when it's not intended, and that's just your leadership style, it just demoralizes people. So people need to know that when you are telling them something for good or bad or lamenting, they know it's coming from a good place in the heart. And those are the things. And and just treasure them, prize them, because these are all your people and they're putting their days and of hard work for you. And you need to, nurture them and just give them the ways to grow. So, yeah.
Well, Sarthak, I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and I've learned a lot. And you're a great leader. Hats off to you with all of your success. And thanks for sharing your thoughtful insights around the art of leading.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Thank you for having me. And I'm glad I could, these were interesting questions. I'm glad that I could give my little, nuggets. But again, I mean, there is no wrong or right in leadership, right? I mean, these are my tenets. I'm sure this is your job. You talk to a lot of leaders. I'm sure there are a lot of other leadership styles that I would love to learn from, and I will definitely take you up on the offer of even looking at your other videos and what the other leaders have to say, because it's all about cross-pollinating. We live, we learn. So I
love that. We live, we learn. Well, thank you for listening, and this is the stuff that growth is made of.
Yep, absolutely.